episode is brought to you by North Texas Honda Dealers. North Texas Honda Dealers, they're here to help.
He has time, launches it to the end zone. Touchdown! Terrence Williams!
The throw goes to the right side for Crabtree. It's caught. He he's going hard down, Red Raiders!
Bunty up the 10. Bunty up the right sideline!
Yep, he's got to go. He's tackled. Sam Houston wins it. The Bearcats capture their first FCS championship.
Hello, welcome to the Republican Football. I'm your host, Ishmael Johnson, the college editor here at Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Thank you for joining us for the special edition of Republican Football on this usual Wednesday at 2 p.m. We have a little bit of a different setup. One, if you noticed that the orientation is a little different because it's National Signing Day, and I'm not alone here. I am usually joined by someone at the desk, but we switched them out for a little bit of a rearranging. Recruiting director Greg Powers.
Let's go.
Yeah,
National
man.
Signing Day, early signing period. Thanks for having me on, Ish.
Of course, man. Of course. We had to get the expert on to talk about everything happening in the state. So, give you a little rundown, right? National Signing Day going on right now. A bunch of teams, I should say, finishing up their classes. We got a couple signings that we'll talk about that are coming later in the day. We're going to go through all the Power 5 teams, all the Power 5 programs, give our thoughts, give our opinions, and kind of the marquee signings. We have a special guest, Joey McGuire, Texas Tech head coach, is going to join us right off the top. We'll go right into Texas Tech, who signed the top class in the Big 12. Amongst that, right, while we're going through each class, we're going to be giving our breakdown, me and Greg Powers here. But also, if we want to toss it over to the other side of the studio, got those guys over there. Look at that. Greg Tepper and Carter Yates.
What's up,
What's
folks?
up with y'all?
Welcome into the BTZ, the ball talking zone. Because Carter Yates and I, we're going to be just over here, two dudes talking ball. Going to be breaking down some prospects.
Normally I'm at the desk, but I had to get up and move around, get up by the video board here to talk about some of the best signees we're seeing out of these classes.
There's too much energy over here,
There's way too much energy.
which is why we're gonna bring the energy, talking about some of the best prospects across the state. It's been a fun day already.
Oh yes, a lot of news dropping today. I know Greg Powers in the studio earlier talking about Ty Anthony Smith happening at 6:30 tonight. We've already had some flips. Aaron Hampton goes from Texas to Alabama. The surprises aren't going to stop just yet. Long day to go.
We'll be over here anytime you guys need us. So anytime you guys want to talk some ball, just toss over to us, and we've got you covered.
Ball talking zone.
Ball talking zone.
All right, so that was a new invention.
I don't know if I can handle that much ball talking.
That's why they're on that side of the studio.
Yeah,
by
no
the
doubt.
way.
They're bringing the energy. But, I mean, in all fairness,
Yeah.
National Signing Day, it's a celebration.
Sure.
Right? That's how I see it. A lot of opportunity for high school football players to go on and play at the next level, and opportunities for college teams to get a whole lot better instantly with some of their key signings.
Yeah, and what I love about this year's National Signing Day is that it coincides in its own week, right? We just came fresh off the state title games. I know the UIL calendar kind of just fell like that. It'll happen to just fall like that sometimes. Usually we're at the state title games, right?
Right.
Usually on a Wednesday, and we have to kind of like divide up coverage. But this year it happened to fall perfectly. We got all of that done. And so I think the thing I love about most of it is that we got to see a lot of these guys who are signing today one more time, right? You'll hear names like DJ Bailey, you'll hear names like Adam Hill for Albany, things like that. Whether they're highly touted or kind of the underrated guys, they kind of had a lot of them had their kind of swan song to their high school career, and they can kind of carry it into National Signing Day too.
You did hit DeSoto. I like how you avoided Duncanville, because if you started rattling off names from Duncanville who signed today, it'd be a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. We're going to go in group program by program for the Power 5, right? And then we're going to go into the group of 5 because they also had significant days. But we're going to talk about kind of marquee signings because a lot of those programs are still going to use the second signing day as well. Of course, transfers are going to play a big part in a lot of those programs, particularly teams like North Texas. They'll probably utilize the window for that. And so, yeah, we'll be talking more about those programs as kind of a kind of piecemeal kind of situation, if you will. But for us, Powers, before we call our special guest, Joey McGuire will be joining us at about 12:15ish. What were some of your kind of takeaways from today's signing day as a whole, as you kind of look from the top down? Of course, we have guys like DJ Lagway. We're still waiting to hear word, right? There's still some rumors on what he's going to do. You mentioned Ty Anthony Smith later on today.
This has been the most exciting National Signing Day that we've had in a long time as far as flips and new commitments are concerned. You know, there was a lot of intrigue surrounding Texas's signing of 5-star wide receiver Ryan Wingo, which
Yeah.
was a very important commitment as I see it. Actually, he did sign with Texas.
Yes, he did.
Missouri made a strong push towards the end of this thing to try to get him to flip. But he was an important addition because people see that wide receiver moniker and think, oh, well, he's a field stretching guy at 6'2", 205 pounds.
Right.
Wingo has actually got a little bit of a history playing running back, so I think that he comes in right away and can change that offense around because he's a guy who you can get the ball to on underneath routes and can kind of do some different things there in that offense. DJ Lagway, DJ Lagway is a big commitment that we're going to be watching here. As a matter of fact, we're going to be bringing you live coverage of DJ Lagway's signing day press conference at 3:30 p.m. at TexasFootball.com on our YouTube channel and on Texan Live. That's something that everybody's watching because Lagway, I don't want to use the word waffling, but Lagway's been looking into all of his options as his signing approaches, and USC and Texas A&M are pushing.
Yeah, USC, Texas A&M, I believe. Steve Wolfong of 247 tweeted out that Lincoln Riley had called him within the last hour or so.
Called Lagway.
Lagway, yes, called Lagway. He's also reporting that Wolfong talked to DJ Lagway's dad and said, as far as he knows, right, it's obviously his son's decision in the end, but as far as he knows, he's not changing. But we've kind of seen a little bit of Florida's momentum sway a little bit, right? They lost.
It's not been a good day for Florida.
Right, it has not been. LJ McCray, their other 5-star commit, is not announcing, or he's not signing today. He did announce that. They've lost some other commits as well. So
Xavier Filsaime, he flipped to Texas.
Yes, that's a good point. And so all of a sudden they're dropping in the national rankings a little bit. And so as far as DJ Lagway's commitment, we have nothing to indicate that he is changing, but the waves and the momentum, right? As you know, recruiting kind of comes in waves and it kind of comes in cycles, and the cycle and the waves seem to be pointing away from Florida right
Here's
now.
something important to note in that recruitment.
Yeah.
USC finished second for DJ Lagway when he committed to Florida. At that time, they had Malachi Nelson on roster.
True.
And they have, and I'm not saying that this is an important factor in his decision-making process, but USC has really moved the needle as far as NIL money is concerned to the quarterback position. It's a precedent that has been set. There's an opportunity at USC, and Lincoln Riley has developed what I would consider probably the top-tier quarterbacks over the last 5 seasons. So he is the QB guru on the college football landscape.
Yeah, and so I believe they're also in play for Will Howard, right? A transfer quarterback. So it looks like they have a stopgap for 1 year if they maybe Lagway want it. Right now it looks like Florida's going to really count on him a lot if he does sign there. Right. And so it's like, does he want that pressure? He might invite that pressure. He's used to that at Willis, but is there a situation where USC says, hey, there's no pressure your first year. Come here, learn under Will Howard, learn under year. Then the seat's yours heading into 2025. So, again, we'll see. Please stay tuned to TexanLive.com, TexasFootball.com, the YouTube page, all this stuff. The guys down there in Houston will be at Willis High School for that ceremony, and I think we'll have a bunch of people paying attention to that. All right. Before we're not going to talk about a lot of the guys going out of state from the state of Texas, but a couple guys that have signed. I believe Justin Williams has signed for Georgia.
Yep.
And Draylon Miller has signed for Colorado. So of course Lagway, we'll see, is penciled right now as committed to Florida. And I guess and then Taylor Tatum as well for Oklahoma.
That was a big get because I think they need running back depth at Oklahoma. They need somebody who can step right in and probably contribute right away. And one of the cycle surprises, they didn't get Caden Durham, who committed to LSU. He was considered an OU lean because he's from Southmore, which is right down the street from OU's campus.
I know the guy we saw tear it up.
I don't want to say you backfilled with the number 1 running back, but I'm just saying they could have had a 1-2 punch out of Texas. But I'm sure they're happy to settle on Taylor Tatum, who will be a 2-sport star there because he's also going to play baseball.
Yes, he did. They also I saw the baseball page actually tweet out his baseball uniform, so that was pretty cool. Casey Poe as well from Lindale going to Alabama.
Monster.
Yeah, that's going to be a dude right there. And we mentioned
Anthony Smith.
Anthony Smith. So we're waiting to see, right? We're waiting to see on him where exactly he decides to go. I'm very curious.
Yeah, me too.
I'm very curious because it's A&M. We'll talk more about A&M later on in the show when we get to our program breakdown, but that class was kind of falling apart under Jimbo, right? I can't blame Elko for however this class turns out, whatever he puts together.
Jasper's Golden Triangle, right?
Sure, yeah, exactly.
So I would say like they lost the Golden Triangle dudes already, right? They lost Draylon Miller, they lost Weston Davis. Will Ty Anthony Smith flip to Texas, complete that triangle of players who they had committed, who are going on to other programs. That'll be interesting to watch. He's going to make his decision or his signing at 6:30 in Jasper. They're going to be doing the signing ceremony at a local church there, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, I was about to say, I love
Something
when they get
different.
those. Yeah, it's different than just the high school. Still gives them, it still represents kind of the community in a way and kind of a community center for them. So, all right, so that'll do it for us this intro segment. Remember, Joey McGuire will be joining us in about under 5 minutes or so. We're going to give him a call, talk about Texas Tech's recruitment. Before we get really in-depth on Texas Tech, just kind of your first initial thoughts on this class that they've put together.
I mean, they signed the number 1 class in their conference. This is the second highest rated class. It may end up being first. We're just kind of waiting to see how everything shakes out because other schools affect where Texas Tech is rated. They were number 22 in the nation last I checked, which would rival their highest finished in 2011, which was 22nd, I believe. Yeah. So they're battling for the number 1 class historically at Texas Tech, right? And they signed what I would consider, well, I mean, it's not even me just considering, they signed the highest rated player in the history of Texas Tech football and 5-star Micah Hudson, who's the DCTF cover boy for the Rising magazine. And, you know, he is, to me, a transcendent talent.
Yeah, no, 100%. All right, so we are going to talk about all these programs going on. I mentioned all the Power 5 programs and the Group of 5 programs. So what's going to happen next is we're going to go to break, and we're going to come back with head coach Joey McGuire. But first, really quickly, a lot of these schools we're going to talk about, you see this code right there. There we go for people on YouTube. Homefieldapparel.com. A lot of these schools have retro apparel, the best retro apparel in college athletics, in my opinion. Promo code DCTF for 15% off your first-time purchase. Again, go check out a Texas Tech shirt. They got SMU. They got Rice. Some of the best stuff, some of the best branding you're going to find on the market. Homefieldapparel.com. Promo code DCTF for 15% off your first-time purchase. We will be back after this break.
Born and bred in Texas hits a little different, as it should. Texas loves doing business with fellow Texans. VCR Now takes its Texas roots as seriously as its many partnerships with schools and universities around the state. It's also why we're so proud to promote our brand in the pages of the Texas Bible, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and on the airwaves of Texas Football Today. Driven by producing quality broadcast video, state-of-the-art audio, and LED video scoreboards at affordable prices, VCR Now makes sure to listen to your needs in its athletic department before recommending the next best steps. Building great products is our business, and it's our focus on building meaningful, long-term partnerships with our clients that sets us apart. From our 24/7, 365-day help desk, the training lab in our hometown of Red Oak, or our sports marketing business plan that puts money back in the hands of our athletic departments we support, VCR Now is built to last. Reach out to us today at info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW. Again, that's info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW.
All right, we're back, and we are joined, I believe, by the main man in Lubbock, the mayor-president of Lubbock, head coach Joey McGuire at Texas Tech. How you doing, Coach?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, man. All right, so if I imagine you right now, I imagine you're just kind of kicked your feet up and just kind of watching the chaos happen because your guys' business was done by like 9 a.m. today?
Yeah, we were pretty close. I think it was right around that time. You know, we didn't have any surprises as far as not losing anybody that was committed to us. And then we knew the one guy when Maurice Rodriguez committed. We already talked to him last night, and we knew he was in. And so he hadn't put it out yet, but that was a nice surprise for our fan base.
Of course, everybody's gonna be talking about, you know, the guy of your class, Micah Hudson, 5-star out of Lake Belton. You know, a lot of people consider him kind of a program-changing signing. For you, I guess. Well, first for you, what does that mean to Texas Tech? But also, like, how did that recruitment kind of come to be?
It means a lot for a couple of different reasons. You know, two of the higher recruited guys that we have. And I talk about both of them kind of in the same time as Micah Hudson and Ellis Davis out of Prosper High School, because both of those guys, you know, they were so heavily recruited, and we didn't start off great. We were 1-3, and then we ended up 3-5, and they stuck with us. I mean, they never wavered. It was great to see them. They really helped lead this class along with Will Hammond, and so Micah means so much. He's such a phenomenal person. He's a guy that absolutely loves football. And, he has been blessed with some incredible ability. And so whenever you put that all into one, you get a guy that's going to be really special. And, I can see him making an impact really early. He'll be on campus. Our freshmen move in January 6th. And, we'll get him in here and get ready to roll for spring football.
You mentioned him, Will Hammond, one of my favorite players that you've signed. I saw him last season in the season opener against San Marcos, and before I could look him up, I saw you guys had offered him already. How early did you guys get in on Will Hammond? Because it was before he was really on many people's radars when you guys already had an offer his way.
Yeah, early, that it worked out perfect because Coach Kitley, he recruits that Austin, Central Texas area. And so, he has Hutto as one of his schools. So it worked out perfect that he's been able to see him, really early as a younger quarterback. We loved his leadership. Different people, say he's a pro style. We view him as a dual threat guy. He can really run. And then he's got great pocket presence. But one thing that was really cool about Will is whenever we sat down with him and we said, look, if you're going to be our quarterback, we tell all our quarterbacks this when they commit, you're the only guy we're recruiting. So we're stop recruiting quarterbacks. And you're kind of the face of the program. You got to help us recruit everybody else. He took that really serious. His family took it serious. I mean, they went during his bye week. They went and watched Micah play. He played on a different night that Cam Dickey played. So he went and watched Cam Dickey play. And, they developed a really strong relationship, and that made a big difference in this class.
And you mentioned Coach Kitley, but also I know you guys got a very big investment in your off-field recruiting staff. Guys like James Blanchard and Brian Nance. How big of a part do they play in putting together a class like this?
Well, I would say they're the tip of the spear. They're the guys that have watched all of these guys on tape. They're the first guys on them whenever it comes to the eyes on a player. And so they make such a big difference. They do such a great job developing relationships. I have 4 guys, Brian Nance, Jake Pittman, Sean Kinney, and they're led by James Blanchard. And we really do treat this more as like, he's a GM. And so it's more like an NFL type model. And those are the guys that are really saying, hey, we've watched this guy. You need to go see him live. And these are the guys we're recruiting. And they've done such a good job of identifying talent early so we can build those relationships.
And, for you personally and for tech, kind of establishing Tech's identity out there in West Texas and the South Plains, how good was it to get guys that maybe fall under the radar for a lot of people, like an Adam Hill out of Albany, a lot of guys like that, to kind of, show them love and show them that there's a spot for them in Lubbock?
Yeah, one of the big things that I wanted to do is make sure we did a good job recruiting West Texas and then recruiting the state of Texas. And so getting a guy like that was the MVP of the state championship. I mean, he's kind of what the brand's all about: tough, competitive. He loves football. He'll come in here and, we're going to look at him at linebacker, but it's great to know that he could go over and play running back. We've got some guys like that, that play a lot of different positions that, played quarterback for their high school team. They're going to move to running back. We've got 2 of those guys and Dickey and Jacoby. And so we're excited about, those guys. And I think that's one thing that we did with this class is, last year we went outside of the state and got 4 or 5 guys. We had good connections with them, but this year, this class is really, when you're talking about the high school class, it's all the state of Texas and recruiting, these high schools in Texas.
Last 2 questions from me, Coach. What does wrapping up this class pretty early do? Because a lot of guys are kind of, hinging decisions, or a lot of programs are hinging decisions on guys announcing an hour from now, a couple hours from now this evening. But you guys basically were, like I mentioned, done by like almost 9 a.m. What does that set you guys up to do now that you guys had things kind of wrapped up?
Well, it's been a crazy month. I mean, we were playing an early bowl game. We had guys coming in that were in the transfer portal, and then we were hanging on like crazy. We had a couple in-state schools come in late on some of our players, and so we're hanging on like crazy. And so what it allows the coaches to do, as soon as we were done with the class, man, they got out of here. So they got a little bit of time off, much needed time off. And then it was funny. I walked in yesterday to the recruiting department, and I was like, who y'all looking at? And I figured they were looking in the transfer portal, and they were like, we're already re-looking at some of the 25s and 26s. So, it starts all the way back over. I mean, this is recruiting is 365, 24/7. And so, we're right back at it. But the good thing is getting our class already in. And like I said, we already know when they're moving in with the mid-years and the transfers. And so now the coaches get a little time off.
And lastly, you mentioned a little bit the calendar's crazy. You got a bowl game coming up, but also transfer portal is very active. You got some guys to replace. What's kind of the initial strategy you guys are going into the portal with?
We're going to recruit high school athletes. I mean, we signed 20 plus last year. I think there was 24. We had another 3 walk-ons. Today we signed 20. We had another 4 walk-ons. And so our roster is going to be made up of guys that we recruited out of high school. Whenever we look at the transfer portal, it's almost like you're filling in to where maybe you lost a senior and the next guy up was a true freshman. Maybe they're not ready yet physically. And so when we look at the transfer portal, it's more out of needs. That's not where we're going to live. And so you're going to see Tech, probably somewhere between 6 and 10 guys every year out of the transfer portal.
Okay, perfect. All right. Hey, Coach, thanks so much for joining us. If you need anything, you guys can always call in here.
You got it, man. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you. Take care. All right, there's the head coach of Texas Tech, the mayor, unofficial mayor of Lubbock himself, Joey McGuire. Let me take these headphones off real quick. All right, so I can talk to y'all because we're going right into program breakdowns. Look, we just talked about Texas Tech a little bit with Joey McGuire. It starts at the top, right? We got to talk Micah Hudson before anybody else.
I mean, it's always fun to hear Coach McGuire.
Yeah.
Talk, right?
Sure.
I know that he's a guy that is really energetic about his program. He's a lot of fun to listen speak about this type of stuff because of his passion for it. He lived on the other side of it, right?
Yeah, right.
When he was sending these guys to colleges on National Signing Day, he had to put together the ceremonies and the celebrations at the high school level, and now he's on the other side of it receiving the LOI. So he's somebody who's lived like full circle in the heartbeat of national college football recruiting. So it's really cool to hear his opinions and his takes on the whole process.
Yeah, I mentioned Micah Hudson and guys like Will Hammond as well. I think this class showed, before we pitch it over to Greg and Carter to talk about his particular recruit, I think this class to me represents that you can get talent to Lubbock and you can get high caliber talent to Lubbock.
It's an A.
Yeah.
This is an A.
Yeah.
I mean, finished with the #1 class in the conference, setting themselves up for success, and they've really done a tremendous job of already securing some good transfer portal talent as well. You can look at the top 3 guys, Micah Hudson, Will Hammond, Ellis Davis. Those are the 3 highest rated guys in this class, but there's quality from top to bottom and a ton of talent that Coach McGuire and his staff can be really proud of.
One of the sleepers, Jacoby Williams as well, one of the guys from a small school that is going to be able to put him basically anywhere on the field, and if they have a job for him, they'll be able to kind of
Mr. Do everything at Beckville. I think he can even punt.
Yeah, probably. I think he did punt it.
Yeah, I think he did.
All right, so speaking of guys top to bottom, let's pitch it over to the other side of the studio where they're going to talk about a guy in particular.
That's right. Welcome back to the BTZ. It's Carter Yates, Greg Tepper. We're breaking down film on one guy that I'm really excited to see take his talents to Lubbock. It's Pflugerville Weiss safety Peyton Morgan, and I know we've been in the film room just drowning ourselves in tape. Peyton Morgan pops off the tape whenever you put it on.
Well, when we talk to Joey McGuire, of course you got to talk about Micah Hudson, Will Hammond, because the offense puts butts in the seats, but the defense will be the difference in winning championships. And you pop on Peyton Morgan's tape, he is lean, mean, and interception machine. I like to put him out at center field, and you throw the ball to the right, he's going to go over there and get it. You throw the ball to the left, he's going to go over there from over the top and get it. There's guys who are free safeties and guys who are strong safeties. I think Peyton Morgan is a free safety by and large.
He's a guy who's so rangy. He's got the ability to move all around the defensive formation. And it's easy to see why Texas Tech was so early on him. He's a guy that you can move around, the kind of position versatility out there. If you need to man him up on somebody, I'm pretty sure he could lock him down. I really like what Peyton Morgan brings. He's a track guy, and one of the things that really impresses me about Peyton Morgan and about the Texas Tech apparatus as a whole, this is a guy who committed in July, right? He's been a long time commit to Texas Tech and never wavered. He was a guy that Texas Tech pretty much put in the win column early, and that's been what Joey McGuire and company have done. They've gotten to these talented guys early, been the first in the door, and gotten them to the finish line today. And you can see why they're excited about this young man.
Yeah, you talk about Brian Nance and James Blanchard, again, an early offer. And when I said he's a free safety, do not let that fool you and say he's not tough. We got one more interception right here. And then as we go on this film, you see him manning up in the slot, like you were talking about what he can do. Great position versatility. And then when he gets to the ball carrier, he's going to lay the boom right here.
Yeah.
Watch this. There's an interception right there. There's some hits coming up, though. And, I said he's long and lean.
Bang. Yeah.
Right there. Gets the ball right there. He can pack a punch when he brings it.
Yeah, he is a guy that I'm really excited to see in the secondary out there in Lubbock, and now is heading to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. A big get for Joey McGuire and company. I mean, make no mistake, Micah Hudson and company, those are the headliners, but Peyton Morgan, guys, is going to be a guy that's going to help them along the way.
And we've already seen this culture starting to shift a little bit at Texas Tech. Big 12 Media Days, we saw them bring 2 interior defensive linemen to that. When's the last time you saw that? And then now, as Joey McGuire gets his culture set in West Texas, much more balanced program. They were 75th in the nation in passing yards allowed last year. That's a pass-happy Big 12. Peyton Morgan will help them lower that number for sure.
It's a big day for Texas Tech out there, and locking in the best class in the Big 12, boys. And Peyton Morgan a big part of that.
All right, there you go. I mean, look, Carter mentioned it with kind of the interior linemen on the defensive side, kind of showing their showing something that Tech fans haven't seen in a while, which is a physicality and a talent on defense in particular.
I look at these classes as a 2-year thing, right? The 5 highest rated commitments in last year's cycle were defensive commitments.
Yeah.
This year they put it together on the offensive side of the ball. And if you want like a name to remember, right, I'm going to hit you with one name to remember. Jacob Ponton from Dripping Springs.
Okay.
6'7", 260-pound guy who I think could one day develop into an NFL draft pick. This is a guy that a lot of people overlook, but Texas Tech, again, popped in with that early offer, got him on the commitment list. Some other schools tried to flip him, but they couldn't do it.
Before we move on that note, I asked McGuire about their transfer portal strategy, and he was very candid, saying like he wants high school players to be the root of his class, like we mentioned. And you look at the future and the depth of this program; they have the depth there, right? In terms of that, he wants the transfer portal to be the plug and play in terms of if they lose a senior and a freshman's not quite there. Right, here comes a senior that they plug in. And I think that's what we're going to see mainly. I think we're going to see it at the wide receiver position. Jaron Bradley's gone. Miles Price is gone. I can't remember the guy's name who just committed to UTSA, but they've lost a couple wide receivers, veteran wide receivers. That's where I think we'll see the immediate talent help. Right. Obviously, a guy like Micah Hudson will come in.
Well, what about Jalen Conyers? I think Jalen Conyers comes in from Arizona State, pairs up
point.
with some of these guys. They got Caleb Douglas coming in
from
Florida. They have Micah Hudson. I think the offense is going to be like overhauled day one because you introduce a guy that's 6 foot. 6'5", 270 pounds.
Right.
He's a mean guy up front, but he can also stretch the field in the middle of the field.
Right.
So, and I think that opens up things for everybody else, opens up space for everybody to operate. I think that's an important commitment via the transfer portal, not to overlook it.
Yeah. All right, moving on to our next program in the slate. Let's talk about the Texas Longhorns, man.
Let's do it, man.
Look, we talked about Texas Tech and how well things are going there, top class in the Big 12, but I mean, Texas, I think, I'm not going to say the phrase, I'm going to avoid that this whole show, but defensive line, secondary, wide receiver, like every position of need that they needed, they got. Colin Simmons, you got Ryan Wingo, you got Xavier Filzami, Kobe Black, right? We're still waiting potentially on Anthony Smith. Like we're like waiting on like potentially even more.
See, you did the same thing as me.
Yeah.
I ran down Texas Longhorns in a video earlier, and I didn't even mention Jarrett Gibson, who's the number 2 rated running back in the country.
Oh my gosh.
Right? That's how good this class is that you're not mentioning guys who are elite national level talents.
Alex January.
Alex January, 4-star here at DCTF. Top to bottom, Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns did a tremendous job. They closed strong, flipping Xavier Filsamy from Florida. Ty Anthony Smith pending potentially later tonight could be like a cherry on top of this class.
Right.
They did suffer one setback today. Aaron Hampton decommitted from Texas and flipped to Alabama. But honestly, I think Aaron Hampton made a good decision for his future because I don't really know how he fit into this class. I've always liked Aaron Hampton as a defensive player first and foremost.
Sure.
And what Texas has done in the secondary, I think, sets them up for future national championship pursuits.
Yes.
I look back 5 years in Alabama, LSU, Georgia. They have been coming into Texas and getting the best defensive backs.
100%.
Now these guys are staying home. And pass defense wins championships. And if you can put a good secondary together with a guy like 5-star defensive end Colin Simmons, who had 22.5 sacks last year and is back-to-back defensive MVP of the 6A Division I state championship game, which is the state's highest classification, by the way.
Right.
You start to see a recipe for winning, continued winning, and putting them in the national spotlight year over year.
And by the way, you sprinkle in some depth with Trey Owens at quarterback, right?
Yeah,
just like
no
a
doubt.
little bit, just adding a little bit more depth to an already loaded roster.
I love a class that has top end talent but has sleepers who you love. Parker Livingston at Lovejoy's a guy at 6'3", 180 pounds, who could be a sleeper wide receiver in this class that puts up monster numbers.
I mentioned one of the guys' names, Alex January, and there's some film breakdown. Let's go back to the ball talking zone.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for recognizing the official name of the area over here, Carter Yates and Greg Tepper, breaking down the other, it's strange to say the other defensive lineman from Duncanville, but Colin Simmons is kind of like burns up so much of the oxygen in the room that we may be missing one of the other stars of DCTF 4-star, the 50th ranked prospect in the class of 2024, interior defensive lineman Alex January, a menace in the middle of the defense.
And we talk about Colin Simmons, a 2-time state defensive MVP. Alex January was the district defensive MVP for Duncanville. Keep in mind, these highlights, guys, are one game he played this year. That's how terrifying this man is. And we think about Texas. What's the difference in the Longhorns this year? Why are they in the college football playoff? It's the defensive tackles with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. Alex January is a guy who's already 6'4", 325 pounds. Tavondre Sweat ballooned up to 369 over 3 years. They're getting a guy who's already more physical than Tavondre Sweat was back in the day coming out of Hallettsville. And now you plug in Alex January, it's scary.
It's terrifying get-off speed here. A guy who can get off his blocks early, shed blocks, and get into the backfield. He's a guy who creates pressure in the interior of a defense, and that's a different kind of pressure. Obviously, look, edge rushers are always going to be the coin of the realm, but if you are able to get pressure in the middle of the defense, you take a look at number 11 here, then you have a guy who's really special. And by the way, he's a Texas legacy. His dad Mike played for Texas in the mid-'80s, but this guy is just you could very easily see Alex January being that next guy who takes the mantle from the Tavondre Sweats of the world on this next generation of Texas Longhorns interior line.
Look how terrifying that is right there, getting to the quarterback. And Alex January is an interesting guy because he didn't start playing football until 8th grade. He was perhaps the state of Texas's largest Pee Wee baseball player. Before that, mashing taters and line drives and mowing guys down from the pitcher's mound. He's gone through 4 years now at Duncanville's defensive line, been groomed there. Obviously, his dad was a Texas legacy. How much better can he get once he gets in a college program? That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, there's a lot of meat on that bone and a lot of in that way. That he's a guy who I think the upside is really there. The present is really scary right now. What could he be in the future? It's a Texas sweep on the defensive line for Duncanville, the 6A Division I state champs, and Alex January. A big part heading to Austin alongside his teammate Colin Simmons.
I mean, I think the rise of Texas and kind of the recovery of Texas as a national power again, it starts up front, right? You can look at the team now with Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, and it looks like they're doubling down on that, right? They have one of the best D-line coaches in the country in Bo Davis, and it's just like, hey, let's just give them guys to work with. And it's not like, I know Simmons is the number one defensive lineman according to us, but guys like Tavondre Sweat, not necessarily the most highly touted guys, but guys that you trust Bo Davis to be able to develop.
I'll go back and say that we had Tavondre Sweat rated as a 4-star, number 29 player in the state. Only service to rate Tavondre Sweat as a 4-star, so I'm going to be really proud on NFL Draft Day when we hear his name called.
Yeah.
And I'm going to stay in that same vein and give you a guy to keep an eye on, Nate Kibble.
Yes.
6
Yeah,
foot 2.5,
absolutely.
6'3", 300-pound, 4-year starter at Humboldt Atascocita, one of the top programs in the state that's known for producing O-line talent. His commitment, by and large, has flew under the radar of everybody, and all he has done is go out and produce and block dudes and put them on their butts.
Yeah.
That's Nate Kibble in a nutshell, and I think that he's as college-ready as you'll find, right? He's not the tallest dude,
Sure.
but he's efficient. And I love that about him. So up front, Texas has done a tremendous job. You saw it on the field this year, and that's what sustains the success in the trenches.
Yep. And one more thing, one closing thought on Texas. Similar to Texas Tech, where Joey McGuire said we're going to fill holes with the transfer portal, that's what Texas is doing. The top programs, Texas, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Ohio State, they don't use the transfer portal to make their roster, right? They recruit and keep hold of talent, and then use the portal to fix a lot of missing holes. What do they need after this year? They're going to need some wide receiver depth. They go and get Matthew Golden, right? They need some help in the secondary. That's kind of their weakness this year. They go and get Andrew Makuba. So all of a sudden, they have guys like Malik Muhammad who they recruited who will be there, but also here's a nickel back in Andrew Makuba, right? Here's a wide receiver that can maybe play that receiver that Xavier Worthy is leaving behind with Matthew Golden. And then that gives time for the Jonte Cooks last year, the Ryan Wingos of this year, to then maybe have another year or so to kind of acclimate to before they're asked to be the number one option everywhere.
I think Matthew Golden's plug and play, and I think Andrew Makuba is a superstar, right?
Oh, 100%.
That's a superstar ad. That secondary is so sick. You mentioned Manny Muhammad. You got Terrence Brooks coming back. You have now Andrew Makuba, Kobe Black, Xavier Filsaime. You know, the list goes on and on. There's and Jordan Johnson Rubel. He's all right. He played a couple years at IMG, but he's a Texan. He's from Louisville.
Yes.
So he's an honorary Texan as far as high school football is concerned to me. And I think that he's a guy who can come in and add versatility to that secondary because I think he played nickel, corner, or safety.
Yep. All right, staying in the SEC, let's go to the other side of the Lone Star Showdown. Let's go to Texas A&M. All right. This one's not as joyous as the other two, but there's context to that, right? Typically, when teams switch new coaches, we'll talk about another program that did the same thing. They're not going to necessarily put together the most highly touted class, especially in the transfer portal era. A lot of these coaches come in wanting ready-made talent to kind of do what they want to do. Texas A&M, of course, Mike Elko. People are still wondering, Terry Bussey's not signing today, so like that is their kind of their golden apple of this recruiting class. Of course, people remember when they lost Draylon Miller's commitment. He signed with Colorado. They're still trying to hold on to guys like Dalen Evans. We talked about Anthony Smith. So they're still kind of in limbo. They can
It's in flux.
It's kind of in flux. And you're sure things could end not great by their standards, considering that a year ago, 2 years ago, they signed what people consider the best class of all time. But I think this just shows the natural fluctuations of a program that's going to have to rely on the portal for this first year and then kind of hit 2025 going.
Assuming that they make all the signings of players who they have committed. And Terry Bussey is very much a question mark. You know, I got a chance to speak with him after the state championship game, and looks like out-of-state schools are making a strong push for him. Alabama and LSU, namely. He took official visits to those schools. USC was a school that was in the mix whenever he made his commitment to Texas A&M. That one's still up in the air. You have Dominic McKinley, who didn't sign, who's a 5-star. It's a top recruit. Anthony Smith's making his decision tonight. They haven't yet inked Dalen Evans.
Born and bred in Texas hits a little different, as it should.
So I think that one's going to get done for them. Ernest Campbell is the state's fastest man. He possesses a 10.22 100-meter dash.
Not nothing.
So that's a big signing, I think, because he offers transitional speed and flexibility at the wide receiver position. You can line him up all over the place. But all that being said, with the commitment list they have, they're number 17 in the country.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
I'll take that.
You know what I mean? I'd take that.
It'd be people classify it as a transition class, right? The class is kind of falling apart as Jimbo Fisher was kind of winding down his tenure, and Mike Elko and gang have kind of needed a sprint to kind of get things going. But one guy they did sign, literally a couple of minutes before we went live, officially signed, was Blake Ivy. We're going to go back over to the BTZ. They're going to give us a breakdown on him.
Yeah, Carter, you were, of course, an all-district quarterback in your high school days. You're a glory boy, right? Let's talk about the big hog mollies up front. Let's talk about the people who actually get it done. And Blake Ivy on the offensive line, Texas A&M's done an outstanding job recruiting in the trenches pretty much consistently since for the past 15 years or so. And Blake Ivy is a guy who is going to be the next big thing maybe on this offensive line. A guy with position versatility. The Clear Springs offensive lineman is a playmaker for this team.
You said it right there. Position versatility. The first play you open on the huddle, he is a left tackle pulling around the other side of the formation as a run blocker. And for Texas A&M's new offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, they like to pound the rock. At Kansas State, Avery Johnson and Will Howard both in the power run scheme. I can see Blake Ivy playing tackle. I can see him gaining weight going to guard. But you watch him on tape, he's legit fast going to the second level and getting linebackers and sometimes cornerbacks on a screen.
Yeah, watch his ability to get to like his quick feet there. For a guy who's that big, he moves really well. And the other word that comes to mind when I watch Blake Ivy, a finisher. He finishes blocks. He is not done until you're on your back, and that is something that is going to play anywhere. I think we have him listed at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the 40th best prospect in the class of 2024. Greg Powers likes him as an interior lineman to move to the interior, but he could play anywhere, and a guy that I think that type of skill, depending on who else fills in this class, that's going to be one of those things that I think Mike Elko is going to be happy to have in his back pocket, knowing, okay, we can put Blake Ivy where we need to and not worry about that particular position.
And that's why it was so important. We talked about Cohen Eccles decommitting and going through a bit of a transition class now. When you got a guy with the position versatility as Blake Ivy, I mean, he's going from the left tackle spot out in the C gap to the A gap on the defensive line right there. And it is fun to just watch him when there's maybe 20 people on the far left hash mark. There's Blake Ivy, his defender, on that far right hash mark, getting the job done still.
6'3", 275, probably going to even put on some more size there when he gets to College Station, but he will be a big part of the future down there for the Aggies as they put together the 2024 class, guys.
All right, so we'll see more of that class come to take shape later today, and then into the second signing period as well, as Mike Elko gets his first class, transition class, kind of together. All right, let's go to the Hilltop. How about that? SMU, of course, moving to the ACC, and in my opinion, when I look at this class, I think that they're still maintaining the Dallas, standard and kind of the Dallas ethos, right? Keeping everybody in DFW that they can get home, but also they're recruiting like a Power 5 program that they're going to be soon. They're bringing in a lot of transfers that kind of help the immediacy, right? I think Amari Abor,
right.
Savion Bird as well, 2 Duncanville guys, former
Nate
Duncanville
Anderson.
Guys, Nate Anderson. But they're filling every other position with the depth that we were hoping to see. Guys like Brandon Booker, guys like Davian Dotson, where it's like, okay, maybe not day one. First of all, I think some of them can maybe contribute day one, but they're not going to be asked to do a lot. But regardless, they're setting the foundation to compete now and then also back it up with guys that are born and bred here or within their program for the future.
I love what Rhett Lashley and co. do on the recruiting trail. Mm-hmm. And you look at the recruiting rankings, and they're not going to get their just due.
Right.
As a matter of fact, when I was trying to rate their class, I was caught between a rock and a hard place because they weren't rated very high nationally. I think they were down in the 60s. Mm-hmm. But when I look at their high school football commitment list, these are guys who produce. Yes. Brandon Booker was the star of a DeSoto defense that won back-to-back state championships.
One of the most productive linebackers in the state we've seen.
And extremely flexible.
Yeah.
He's extremely flexible because he's good downhill, but he's also tremendous in pass coverage. He's a turnover machine. Mm-hmm. Katie Dotson, coming from a Duncanville powerhouse where he's won back-to-back state championships. Mm-hmm. William Nettles had a tremendous, they call him Speedy because he's a 6'1", 190-pound corner who can absolutely fly. Mm-hmm. Speedy Nettles was a great pickup who had a awesome senior year.
Yes.
And really, I'm just going to keep going down the high school football list. Jalen Moses, Carrollton Newman Smith was not good.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Jalen Moses arrives, and Newman Smith was pretty good this year. You know what I mean?
Solid,
that program turned over a whole new leaf, and it was because of a talent like Jalen Moses that was on the field all the time playing on both sides of the football. Mm-hmm. So I love what they do because they get football playing dudes and then mix them in with the guys like you're saying, a 5-star transfer from Ohio State, a 4-star transfer from Georgia. Mm-hmm. Some of those guys are coming back home, but that dude from Georgia, he's coming to SMU because he wants to compete in the ACC and win some football games, and I think that is an indication of the future of the SMU program.
Derek McFall, another ball-playing guy.
Yeah,
so just
no
get him
doubt.
in, and we'll figure out what to do with him later. One of the guys, Zach Smith, was one of the other guys I wanted to mention. So you mentioned Speedy Nettles, William Nettles from Dallas Christian. One of my favorite players. I think one of my favorite signings in the class in general. But let's break down some film, and they're going to talk about Speedy Nettles on that side.
What was your nickname, Speedy, in high school?
No, it was more like statue.
Okay, got it. Well, this guy, William Nettles, Speedy Nettles out of Dallas Christian, a well-earned nickname because this dude can flat out fly. We like him. He's the number 96 prospect in the DCTF Hot 100. But this is a guy who we project as a cornerback, but was a three-way star for this Dallas Christian state championship squad.
Three-way star because he's kick returning, he's playing wide receiver as a deep ball threat with strong hands. I see him at SMU maybe being a punt returner or a kick returner, giving him an added dimension in the special teams. But okay, we predict him as a cornerback. Why is that important? Because SMU was a better team this year because they gave up 188 passing yards per game. At one point, they were a top 10 offense and defense in the country. That's why they won the American Athletic Conference. Their two quarterbacks, Chris Megginson and Charles Woods, are both graduate transfers. They're losing depth in the secondary. Speedy Nettles comes in, could contribute right away.
Yeah, he's a guy that you can put on your number one receiver and feel pretty good about that out there on an island. He's a guy who's a dynamo on the defensive side. Look, I'm selfish, okay? I want to see him with the ball in his hands. I want to find a way to get him with the ball in his hands, whether that's putting in a specific package on offense or on the special teams, because when you've got that kind of game-breaking speed, I feel like you need to let that thing fly a little bit, and I think Rhett Lashley is going to do that. Beyond that, you take a look at this. This is a guy who, in the Dallas area, you want to talk about, not paying for airfare, right? Let's just drive everywhere and get our talent. This is a perfect example, going out to Mesquite and getting a guy like Speedy Nettles.
SMU is trying to rebrand themselves as the Dallas team, and they've been trying to do it for quite some time, but over these past few years, you're seeing it actually start to happen. We talk about Amari Abler from Duncanville coming back home, Nate Anderson, a Frisco Reedy guy. Preston Stone was the highest rated recruit, right from Parish Episcopal. Jonathan McGill, a 6-year player now from Coppell, still at SMU. Speedy Nettles, another guy's going to be just like that.
Yeah, well, it's okay. We're going to keep it speedy over here, even if we have cement feet. We're not as quick as Speedy Nettles, but we're trying to move through these outstanding prospects as we're celebrating National Signing Day over here.
All right, so I guess that calls off the race between Carter and Speedy. I was going to see who was actually the fastest one.
My money's on Speedy.
Probably, but I
wanted to pick you, Carter, but I just couldn't.
How about we still have them race?
Let's do that. Would be fun.
Yeah. All right. We'll get that arranged. Carter, don't worry about it. We'll get it arranged. All right. So let's move on to the other school in the DFW in the Power 5, TCU. Look, I think that as far as this is one of my favorite classes in terms of just Texas high school football playing guys, right? You got I think guys like Hoss Haney that I think they had to keep, right? They had to keep home. It was from the Fort Worth area, and that was, I think, when looking at this class and looking at their season and how it kind of a downturn it kind of took after last year, it was kind of an encouragement just so that a lot of the recruits aren't losing the vision for what Sonny Dykes has.
There wasn't a more important – there may have been. It's as important as any signing for any college in the state, Hoss Haney.
Yes.
Especially on the back of the news that Chandler Morris was leaving the program.
Sure.
And there's been a lot of talk kind of behind the scenes that Haney can come in and be a day one guy.
Sure. I mean, we saw Josh Hoover come in this year.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love what he brings to the table. If you recall back, he was a wide receiver on the state championship team at Aledo.
I forgot about that, yeah.
Right? So he not only possesses tremendous dual threat ability, he is an elite runner with the football in his hands, with good speed. And one thing that I liked about watching Haney's progression under center is that he is not afraid to press the action. Right? He will try to fit the ball into a tight window. He has the arm to do it. His arm strength has advanced year over year, and he has a very quick trigger. I'm going to liken his profile to Baker Mayfield.
Okay.
I think that's a good high school football comparison for Hoss Haney, and I think as he grows and matures within the TCU program, I think that's the upside that TCU fans can hope for.
I think so. I think when you play for that Alito program, things go so well a lot that it would be easy for him to sit back, drink some coffee, and just hit the open targets that are going to be there. But I think we saw in the state championship game and all throughout this year and last year that, yeah, he's willing to play a little bit gunslinger mode. He has a little bit of a daring style to his game. So he was a great get. Guys like Sterling Brooks, who I'm very interested in, right? Not a lot of production stats-wise, but you look at him and you look at when he does play, you're like, they can make something out of it.
635-pound squat.
Can't teach that.
635-pound squat.
Can't teach that.
330 pounds.
Yes.
I mean, he's a monster in the trenches. I think that's like my sleeper pick. You can look at this TCU class top to bottom. I think they did a tremendous – I put this class and the SMU class, different conferences, but I love what TCU did. They had 20 high school football signings. They have over 10 portal commitments already. Right. This is going to be a completely different roster in Funky Town next year.
Very different.
Like they're going to be
and
a
it was
lot
already
of
different from last year.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of turnover, but they're bringing in quality on the high school football side, which you said, to build their program, and then backfilling that in with good transfer portal talent. But they've taken a new approach, I feel like, in the transfer portal, looking at guys who are more scheme fits versus big names. And I think that's important to note. If you're a TCU fan, you're getting guys who can come in and fit the schemes that you're running versus a big name who just wants to come back home. And I think that that's really important.
Speaking of keeping guys home, a little bit outside of Fort Worth is a little town called Decatur, and we're going to head back over to BC to talk about their star player signed, Nate Palmer.
Back here in the ball talking zone, Greg Tepper and Carter Yates, and let's talk about a ball playing dude in Nate Palmer, a guy who we have ranked 73rd in the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Hot 100. And you want to talk about a guy who just produces? Nate Palmer, who played a sophomore year there at College Station, transfers up to play at Decatur, follows Steve Huff, his coach, up at Decatur, and regardless of where he plays, he just produces. An unbelievable playmaker.
Transferred to Decatur, played there 2 years, and finished as the school's leading rusher. For his high school career, he had 5,187 yards. And TCU fans, I'm not just saying this. We all went to the state 7-on-7 tournament. This was my favorite guy I saw, and he was a running back. He was catching one-handed passes. He was a smooth route runner. His listed track time for the 100 is an 11.2. I think he plays way faster than that, and 11.2 is still not too shabby at all.
Yeah, there's guys who have great track times that it doesn't translate to football speed. This guy has football speed. And what I think is really interesting about Nate Palmer is he's also that guy that can lower the shoulder and get you the tough yards too. I think there's guys who shy away from contact. Nate Palmer's willing to run between the tackles and just hammer it home right here. Look at the ability to break tackles, stay on his feet, great balance, great center of gravity. A guy in Nate Palmer that I think you can feel comfortable handing the ball 15, 20 times, which I know doesn't sound like a lot if you're thinking back to football in the 1980s, but in the era of the bell cow running back, this is a guy who was a bell cow for Decatur for 2 straight years in runs to state semifinals 2 years in a row. This guy, I'm interested to see how he fits in the scheme there at TCU, because they didn't throw to him a ton there at Decatur, but I think they're going to throw to him more, and I think they're going to be happy that they got him out there.
And if state 7-on-7 was any indicator, he can catch the ball. I know it's the easy comparison to make, but I almost think he's a tad bigger Amani Bailey. Amani Bailey had a very good season there in Kendall Bryles' offense. I think Nate Palmer is a guy who compares very well to Amani Bailey. The best compliment you can give a running back is they run angry. Again, this is another guy, 1 game highlights. We didn't pull up the full season tape. You're watching 1 game, what he can do on a night in and night out basis.
Yeah, he will put his foot in the ground and get uphill or get downhill in a hurry. A guy who ran for 50 touchdowns in his career there at Decatur in just 2 seasons. And he going from Decatur to Funky Town to be a part of this Horned Frog class, guys.
All right, let's stick it to the Big 12, and let's go down south to Waco. There's a lot of things going on in Waco.
Yeah, no doubt.
A lot of coaching changes. I believe they had a decommit yesterday from Jeff Grimes' son, Graydon Grimes at China Spring.
Not a surprise there.
Not a surprise, of course.
Signed with Kansas.
Yes. So let's talk a little bit about what's happening there, because I think I can describe this class as kind of safe, right?
Yeah, I'd agree with that statement. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of activity. There wasn't a whole lot of activity down the stretch. As a matter of fact, they're still waiting to hear news on what I consider as one of their top signings, defensive lineman out of Mississippi who took a late official visit to Texas. That hasn't been announced yet to see whether he's going to stick or flip.
Sure.
But one guy who I want to sing praises on is Jadon Porter from Lorena.
Yes, 100%.
6 foot, 180-pound wide receiver.
He's on the scene as a sophomore, I believe.
Yeah, won a state championship there for them at AT&T Stadium. A guy who I feel like from that time till now has grown tremendously.
Yes.
And because he remained on that Baylor commitment list for so long and really didn't have like a lot of recruiting activity, so to speak, a lot of people are going to overlook him.
Sure.
He's a DCTF 4-star and a guy who I really like because of his competitiveness and his ability to be a multifunctional wide receiver, a guy who could line up in the slot or split outside.
Yeah.
So, you can find a fit for him within any offense. So I really like the get for them in Jadon Porter. And Joseph Dodds is pretty good too.
I was about to say, Joseph Dodds, we saw him in the state championship game for Tidehaven, and that dude he's the prototypical, here's a plug for one of Carter's stories he wrote early this year, kind of like, they called him 3-star U, running back U, where it's like guys like Pendergrass, guys like Bryson Washington, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember that guy, he played for a 3A program, and they were blah, 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 and they went to state, and it's like all these boxes that they're able to check off, Richard Reese, and it's like, oh, yeah, they just go to Baylor and they're just good, right? And Joseph Dodd feels like he's the next in line for that pretty easily.
What I'll say about Baylor's staff is that they're tremendous talent evaluators.
Yeah,
They really do a good job in talent evaluation, and they are loyal to Texas high school football talent, which I appreciate as well. A sleeper name to know is Mason Dossett from Fort Bend Ridge Point, another guy that he was a one-time Purdue commit who is a Baylor legacy. His parents also went to Baylor. His dad played football, ran track there. And I think that Dossett is a guy who can really be a good player within that offense. And I think, when you're looking at Baylor, you need to get the offense going, right? And,
Sure.
and a guy that you can point to is DeQuan Finn.
Yeah.
The
that's a good
Toledo
one.
transfer. Can he be the man in Waco?
Sure.
I mean, really, if you look at the signing class, there's not going to be a name that's more important than that name because did they find that guy?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other transfers they brought in, Cameron Jenkins, who's going to help them keep, I think, Caden Jenkins home.
Yeah, no doubt.
Which is a big
Smart.
reunion there. Yeah,
Smart.
Very smart. He played at UNLV, so he's good on his own, but it also helps potentially keep their best defensive player in-house. All right, I mentioned Joseph Dodds, so let's go back over to the ball talk end zone. They're going to talk about the smash mouth running back from Tidehaven.
Yeah, we're talking Joseph Dodds, who is just the latest in a long line of 3A running backs that Dave Aranda likes to bring in. Dawson Pendergrass, Bryson Washington, now a guy like Joseph Dodds. We had an opportunity to see him at the state championship game as Tidehaven fell to Gunner in the 3A Division II state championship. But I think all of us came away pretty darn impressed and understanding, we get the hype about the Tidehaven running back.
Well, that's because Gunter was supposed to roll Tidehaven, and Tidehaven and Gunter were in a dogfight for at least that first half because Joseph Dodds had 2 rushing touchdowns, long rushing touchdowns, by the way, and a touchdown catch. When I watch him on film, I see a one-cut running back who, once he puts his foot in the ground, it's like a Mack truck running through the hole. An interesting thing to note here is that Jake Spavital is the new offensive coordinator at Baylor. He was the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M, the head coach at Texas State. Most recently was the offensive coordinator at Cal, and he had the leading rusher in the Pac-12 in Jaden Ott. Jaden Ott and Joseph Dodds are both 6 foot, 200-pound running backs who have very similar play styles. So I can see him plugging into Spav's offense very nicely.
What's amazing about Joseph Dodds is I don't think if you lined him up in the 40 or you lined him at the 100, I don't think his time would blow you away. But when you watch him, he gets up to top speed so quickly, and then he just pulls away from you. You keep thinking, I should be catching up to this guy. He's too big to be that fast. But when he gets to the edge, and he did that in the state championship game, when he gets to the edge, he is hard to track down. He was wildly impressed in that title game. And by the way, had big touchdown catches in both their semifinal win over Dangerfield and their state championship loss to Gunner. This is a versatile back that I think you could find a way to get him the ball, 10, 15 touches even as a freshman.
And I think that's something that Spavital is going to lean on now in his first year because Baylor's past offense under offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes was very wide zone oriented, where the running backs are taking it out wide. They got to read the blocks off of the linemen. I think you're going to see a lot more dual threat ability out of these running backs.
A great vision from Joseph Dodds as well. One of those guys that I think, Tidehaven obviously had a great year, but a little bit off the beaten path just because, Tidehaven out there in Matagorda County, not a lot of recruiting going on down there, but certainly Baylor getting a bit of a steal there in Joseph Dodds, the outstanding running back from Tidehaven, guys.
Alrighty, and we're going to wrap up the Big 12 here with Houston. New coach Willie Fritz. Similar, I'll say this: similar vibes to Texas A&M, where they're probably gonna have to go a little portal heavy to replace some guys. It's kind of a transition class, and honestly, Dana Holgorsen kind of punted this whole class altogether as he kind of announced in one of his interviews. He was like, "Yeah, if you're still talking about class 2024, that ship is gone." And it's like, "Oh, okay, that's where we're at." So he patches together what he can, brings in guys like Maurice Williams, Raekwon Bell as well. A lot of local talent. Zion Taylor is somebody to keep an eye on as well. A lot of local talent that I think is going to be promising for them in the future. But of course, I think Willie Fritz's mind is going to be on 2025.
Yeah, I think so too. But I will say this: I've worked with Tulane in the past.
Yeah.
Coming over here from a scouting service that kind of dealt with colleges specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Tulane does a tremendous job of identifying players who some of the big schools might overlook.
Sure.
Right? And they're going to bring that with them to UH. Right?
Yes.
And right out of the gates, they identified 2 defensive linemen
Mm-hmm.
in the Lone Star State, right underneath the nose of like all these power programs and all of these sub P5 programs that are looking for like potential NFL talent.
Mm-hmm.
They found 2 guys in this class that I really, really like. And that's Lake Ridge defensive lineman Darius Washington, 6'5", 235 pound. We'll call him defensive lineman because I think he could grow into a defensive tackle. He's played 1 year of football. He was a basketball player. His tape is really, really good.
Okay.
And 6'7", 250 pound defensive end DeMarcus Johnson from Fort Bend Marshall. This dude's a freak. I'm telling you.
Okay.
Both of these guys, they don't even have pictures on their profiles, right?
Yeah.
Like no one knows who they are.
Right.
That's the type of energy that Coach Fritz and his staff are going to bring to UH, and I think it's something that's needed.
Yes.
Right? Because the traditional recruiting method doesn't work there.
Right.
We've proven it.
Right.
Right? You can get Ed Oliver as a one-off. Awesome. He's going to get drafted, right? He's going to be a great player.
Sure.
But it's about winning games. How can Houston win the most games?
Mm-hmm.
And that's by assembling a rare collection of talent that fits within their schemes and their defensive and offensive fits. I think that Willie Fritz is going to do it.
Yeah.
I feel confident that he's going to do it. And you know what? People like Willie Fritz. Texas high school football coaches like him.
I was about to say he coached at Sam Houston for the longest time. He was part of building Georgia Southern into an FBS power after leading them after they transitioned to the FBS. And I think you mentioned it, right? The Ed Olivers. I'm not saying that's not going to happen again, but you mentioned it was a one-off. It was a very special situation from the city, ended up staying in the city. But also, they have to contend with the fact that Texas was down at the time. A&M was down recruiting-wise at the time. LSU wasn't what they are now. And now, okay, let's go get a guy.
They had a Meekins connection.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, exactly. And also, to wrap things up, why don't you go get a guy who's used to recruiting with a giant school next to them? Right. Tulane knows that LSU is going to steal a lot of the top guys. Even Louisiana is going to steal some of the guys that at the time that he was recruiting. And so, yeah, sure, go build a guy who's used to identifying talent that is probably good enough but got overlooked.
We didn't speak about him long enough. Don't gloss over the commitment of Maurice Williams from Shadow Creek.
Massive.
He's the highest rated defensive signing for Houston since Ed Oliver.
Yeah. So there you go. All right, so we're going to I mentioned Raekwon Bell, and let's go back over to the other side of the studio to hear more about him.
Let's talk about the Spring Westfield offensive tackle that Greg Powers thinks has an ability to slide inside. Raekwon Bell, a guy who is a real star for this Westfield offensive line, and that's a program that traditionally has put out great trench play, right? You think about Ed Oliver coming out there, and for Houston, it's important to maintain those relationships at home, and Raekwon Bell on the offensive line for Spring Westfield's a big get for them.
What I see when I watch Raekwon Bell is a 6'4", 305-pound tackle who is quicker than smaller defensive ends in high school. He can kick out the edge or steal the edge. This is a 2-time first-team unanimous all-district offensive tackle, and we talked earlier about Blake Ivy kicking out guys and finishing blocks when he's on another side of the field as the rest of the team. Watching this guy's like watching The Blind Side. He's taking them to the bus because they need to go home.
Yeah, he's a menace out there and a guy who absolutely dominates in one-on-one. And what I appreciate about him, he's another guy that when he's asked to, he can get his chip block and then get up to the next level. He's always looking for more work. When he finishes his block, he's like, great, who do I put on their backside next? Raekwon Bell is a guy who I think can be the anchor for this offensive line for Houston as well. And again, talk about position versatility. He played offensive tackle for Spring Westfield, so he's got great experience there. Greg Powers thinks he could slide inside to the guard spot as well. But he is a big, menacing offensive lineman. And again, you go back to the Westfield pedigree, having that traditional power behind you. I think he's a guy who's going to step in and be pretty polished right away. If he should see some playing time, I would say early on this team, especially because of his skill set.
Well, and especially because left tackle Patrick Paul is now not going to be there anymore. He was an all-conference left tackle for them, maybe a future replacement down the line. But I'll tell you what, the spring Westfield coaches rant and rave about this guy. He's a guy who doesn't miss summer workouts. He's never missed a practice. And culture players like that are so important as you're transitioning under a new regime in Willie Fritz.
This is a great hold here for Willie Fritz to make sure they get Raekwon Bell's letter of intent in. And then one other thing about Willie Fritz before I toss it back to the guys. In 1986, Willie Fritz spent a year as an assistant in Texas high school football. He was an assistant at Willis. DJ Lagway to Houston. Back to you guys over at the other non-ball talking zone.
We're just gonna try to drop that.
Yeah.
Try to drink. No.
I haven't heard any rumors.
I have not
that
heard
Houston,
any.
but it would be. That would put a bow on this signing day.
Yeah.
Like that would be awesome.
Yeah, that would be great.
That would be so cool.
I do love Tepper just throwing that in there.
Yeah,
Just
no
being
doubt.
like, yeah, there's a rumor I made up. Let's take it back to you guys. Anyway, that'll do it for all the Power 5 programs. We're going to wrap up the G5 after this quick break, but we're going to wrap up the G5 with their top signings, and then we're going to go finish up the show with, we're going to go to another break, and then we're going to finish up the show with the unsigned players and what we're looking for kind of for the rest of signing day. So before we do the group of 5, let's take one more break.
Born and bred in Texas hits a little different, as it should. Texas loves doing business with fellow Texans. VCR now takes its Texas roots as seriously as its many partnerships with schools and universities around the state. It's also why we're so proud to promote our brand in the pages of the Texas Bible, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and on the airwaves of Texas Football Today. Driven by producing quality broadcast video, state-of-the-art audio, and LED video scoreboards at affordable prices, VCR now makes sure to listen to your needs in its athletic department before recommending the next best steps. Building great products is our business, and it's our focus on building meaningful, long-term partnerships with our clients that sets us apart. From our 24/7, 365-day help desk, the training lab in our hometown of Red Oak, or our sports marketing business plan that puts money back in the hands of our athletic departments we support, VCR Now is built to last. Reach out to us today at info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW. Again, that's info@vcrnow.com or by calling 855-GO-VCR-NOW.
All right, and we're back here, Republic of Football National Signing Day edition. Ishmael Johnson here with Greg Powers, our recruiting director. And let's talk some Group of 5, all right?
Let's
we
do it.
hit all the Power 5 programs, but we got to show the Group of 5 some love. I'm a Group of 5 alum here in the state of Texas, but we're going to start with one program that's had a lot of noise and a lot of things going on with it. Transfer portals, announcements, players leaving, players coming in, but I think a team that's doing pretty well on the recruiting trail, North Texas.
Breaking news.
Yeah.
North Texas has gained a commitment from Waco Conley running back Kiefer Sibley.
Really?
Since we've been on the air, which
That
I think
is a fantastic
I think
get.
it's a tremendous grab. When I was down there for the Kobe Black commitment ceremony, I was talking with the coaches down there.
Yeah.
And they were just flabbergasted that not more Power 5 schools were showing Kiefer Sibley interest.
Sure,
you remember he
sure.
picked up an offer from Colorado, like right out of the gate
Yeah.
with the old staff, right?
Right.
Not the new staff, not the Deion Sanders led staff.
Right.
But Kiefer Sibley is a huge commit for North Texas. What was funny is, in meeting with the coaches down there, is that he wasn't tipping his hand to them about who he was leaning towards.
was kind of a surprise
Like
to them,
they
too.
had no idea
Yeah.
who he was going to ink with today at the signing ceremony down there at Waco Conley. So tremendous get for UNT today to put a little bow on their class, which really has swelled to 27 players.
Yeah.
They have 27 who signed a letter of intent from the high school ranks.
Yep.
And did a good job of bolstering up that roster because they were hit extremely hard by transfer portal departures. Like that was a team that it may have been hit harder than any other school in the state.
One of the guys I want to hit on is Jaden Smith from
Yeah.
Ingleside. One guy that I think flew under the radar of a lot of people. As you see the
Even
graphic
me.
here for a lot of people, for kind of the not the best players for each Group of 5 team, but at least a lot of the highlighted players. Jaden Smith there at Ingleside. I mean, yeah, including us here at DCTF. Like, he's almost a 2,000-yard receiver, almost 40 touchoudowns, over 40 total
39.
touchdowns. Yeah, 30 touchdowns, receptions, touchdown receptions, 2 kickoff returns for touchdowns, 2 interceptions as well. And he flew under the radar. Only Boston College, ULM, North Texas, right? Programs like that were among the ones that offered him. And North Texas adds him and one of my favorite players of the class, Miles Coleman from Austin Vanderbilt.
Yeah, he's fun, right?
Like, there's so many interesting players that you can just see plugging and playing in this offense. And what I think I like about this is it's a very, I don't say old school because the portal's not that old, but like it's a very traditional building class.
I like what they've done because they've taken numbers. You mentioned Jadon Smith. He's the guy who I feel like, all right, there were 2 guys who got left outside of the DCTF Hot 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. First and foremost, putting together the Texas High School Football Hot 100.
It's very hard.
It's hard. There's so many really good players, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of good players in the Lone Star State. And Jadon Smith, North Texas signee, he was one of the ones who I have regret about. But as a matter of fact, look, you're in the top 100 in this magazine.
There you go.
You slid outside of it, but he's really good.
Yes.
And Tristan Brown, who signed with Vanderbilt from Houston Lamar. Those are 2 wide receivers in this cycle that I thought they're a little bit undersized.
Sure.
But they bring it.
Yeah, they really
And
do.
he brings it. He's so quick in and out of his cuts. And there at Ingleside, no one could stop him.
Right. All right, moving on to Rice now. Caleb Blanton is the guy that I want to touch on because I think that the one thing Mike Bloomgren has done with this Rice program is they're no longer the program that I think is just a pushover.
Right.
When they were in Conference USA for a little bit after they had won their stretch under David Bailiff, Mike Bloomgren had to remake that roster and bring like a physicality and a toughness that translated to a bowl caliber team their first year in the AAC. Guys like Caleb Blanton, and yes, we know about the recruiting difficulties there, right? It's a very tough school to get into.
Right.
Guys like Caleb Blanton, I think, fit that exact mold of a guy who can get into Rice, but also, yeah, he probably could have gone anywhere else he wanted to.
And they beat out some tough programs for him, right? Like
Arizona, Air Force, Tulsa, Marshall, La Tech, just to name a few.
Yeah, so he had some pretty good offers, and that was a good key get from a Manville program that is always perennially loaded with talent.
Yep.
Right, so that was a huge get to get him to stay closer to home or stay, in his own backyard. Drew DeVilliers, quarterback, two sports star. He's also a tremendous baseball talent. He was actually a TCU baseball commitment before he flipped his commitment to Rice because he has grown into a tremendous football projection, right?
Yes.
Like when he first burst onto the scene, he was looking more towards baseball, but as he grew and developed in that Plano East system, he turned into a top-tier football recruit.
We saw him at 7-on-7 over the spring.
Yeah,
and it was
great
very
line.
impressed. Yeah, very impressive.
So big dude with a good arm and is a guy who I think was a huge signing. And I really like Owen Carter, too. He's the
yes.
Trey Owens' top target from a Cy-Fair team that put up a lot of points this year. He's just one of those guys who gets his job done.
Yes.
Strong hands, good route running. I think those 3 guys are 3 guys that I really like at Rice.
Yep. All right, let's try to go a little bit quickly through these. Sam Houston, I mean, there's the guy that we love, DJ Bailey from DeSoto, a guy who me and you have talked about in terms of being like literally the only thing is his size, right? He can make every throw. He's leading a winning program for over 3,300
Arm
yards
cannon.
this year. Insane arm. Has had some of our best favorite throws at the state championship weekend.
Never going to get enough credit for what he's done.
Never going to get enough credit. He only had offers from Lamar, Austin P, Weber State, and Sam Houston said, we'll take that.
Yeah, no doubt. He's a dude who has a winning pedigree, and that's what I like about that get for Sam Houston. And he, again, when you're recruiting a traditional powerhouse in Texas high school football, how's it going to set you up for the next win there?
Right.
Will Sam be able to come back in next year and find a steal as well?
Yep. Texas State, my alma mater. Let's go. How about Jordan Martin, wide receiver from Dallas Kimball? Very, very athletic. Almost 1,000 yards receiving this year. Offers from Boston College, Arizona State, Kansas, North Texas, Ole Miss. You want to talk about a guy who kind of fell to Texas State there, and they kind of lucked into there. Kylan Evans is another guy from Frisco Emerson. I really like what this class for Texas State did, but Jordan Martin, one of my favorite gets.
Yeah, he's a P5 player. Like Jordan Martin's a P5 talent, and Texas State was able to steal him, keep him at home. Frederick Doty,
yes,
a safety.
That's another one.
If you like to see people smash people on defense and deliver big booms, then that's a name that Texas State fans should track.
Yep. UTSA, who just played last night, won their first bowl in the Frisco Bowl. Kenyon Kelly from Denison, 82 tackles, 54 for loss, or solo tackles, I should say. 1 interception this past year. Offers from Arizona, Baylor, Kansas, LSU, Missouri, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, TCU, Tennessee. You mentioned a Power 5 player who just happens to go to UTSA. I mean, Jeff Traylor does it again.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Kenyon Kelly burst onto the scene with an offer from OU. Mm-hmm. Right, that was his first offer.
Yeah,
and UTSA was able to get his commitment and then sign him. As I know, people were beating down the door. 2 names to remember in the middle of that UTSA defense in the future. We talked about trenches winning potential national championships. Well, conference championships are also won in the trenches. Chada Tutu.
Yes.
Pflugerville Weiss, defensive tackle, very active for a big man, and Zechariah Robinson from Brookshire Royal.
Yes.
Those are 2 guys who I think you need to know if you're UTSA fans.
All right, lastly, to round out the group of 5, UTEP got a little bit of a break with Shea Smith, keeping that boy home. El Paso Franklin quarterback, can maybe be an athlete. We'll kind of see. 1,700 yards passing, over almost 1,200 yards rushing. Offers from Houston, North Texas, SMU, Texas State, and Texas Tech. Of course, they had a decommit front with Gail Ochoa going to UNLV, but they were able to kind of get something back. Scotty Walden and those guys hit the ground running.
Yeah, I'm enjoying UTEP right now.
Yeah,
right.
I am too.
Like after years of it being boring and they're not offering any players in state, now UTEP's throwing offers to like freshmen.
Yes.
In the Lone Star State, and it's
Yes.
a lot of fun. Shea Smith's a guy who I think can fit in as a linebacker potentially. He has a lot of experience playing quarterback, so he probably possesses a tremendous football IQ. Could also flip over and play defense. And I gotta pat them on the back for 2 very savvy signings from the Texas high school football world. A&M Consol safety Trace Meadows and Rockwell running back Ashton Emery. Those were 2 good offers and 2 big gets.
Yeah, Emery was, I believe, the
that
latest
was a
get,
cool,
I believe.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
That was a really good one for them. Okay, so that's all the programs for us. We're going to end it talking about 3 unsigned players that are either signing later today or pushing off until the late signing period. Let's talk let's talk Terry Bussey first.
Okay.
Reigning Mr. Texas football. What are you hearing last? Of course, he's still committed to A&M, but announced that he would not be signing today.
I'm sticking with A&M. If I had to have a backup pick, I'm going with LSU.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
I think if it wasn't A&M the first time around, that it would have been LSU. They had a tremendous visit to LSU, on an official visit right before he announced for Texas A&M.
Right.
And I know that there are things in flux in College Station, but here's something that Texas A&M fans can be optimistic about as it relates to Terry Bussey's commitment. He didn't just pick to play at A&M because of the coaching staff or NIL money or the ability to start from day one. There was a long thought process involved for Terry Bussey to pick a program that he thought could sustain him success in life.
Yeah.
So that is why I would hedge my bet towards him sticking to A&M while keeping a close eye on LSU.
Sure. I think he'll definitely be one to watch, especially after that kind of mainstream, continued legend-making performance in the state championship game. Ty Anthony Smith, he will be announcing at 6:30, current A&M commit. What do you think in there? Of course, Texas is making a strong push there. We'll have to wait and see a couple hours from now, but yeah, he's still technically still on the market.
His signing day graphic had an A&M logo above his head. Another long-time Texas A&M commit. Yeah. But from the first interview I did with Ty Anthony Smith until now, Texas and Texas A&M were the 2.
Yeah.
Right. This was always a guy. I know that he flirted with USC, went out there for an official visit, and was really blown away and thought about maybe going out to Cali to play some college ball.
Right.
But to me, Ty Anthony Smith's always been an in-state kid. I think he's going to flip to Texas.
Okay.
I really do. I think the concern for Ty Anthony Smith was initially linebacker depth.
Yes.
At Texas, and they've had a lot of it and signed some really good signings, but I think he's developed into a confident type of player that isn't worried about that anymore.
I think one thing to also keep an eye on is, I know Edgerrin Cooper and Torian York have broken out for A&M, but traditionally, at least the past couple, that's been the one piece that they've been missing as far as putting out that NFL talent.
I agree.
So maybe that is something he considers as well. I don't know. Again, Edgerrin Cooper and York have been fantastic for them, so maybe that's showing a changing of the trend, but it could be a concern if you're considering.
I know it's a pro
level.
Texas A&M territory, right? Like that is Texas A&M country.
Yeah.
So that will be a huge loss for A&M if he does flip. But gun to my head, I'm picking Texas right now.
All right, and lastly, the one, if you refresh this page after we sign off, you will probably be seeing another stream lining up for DJ Lagway, quarterback, the number 1 quarterback in the state, according to us. Are still committed to Florida, right? But there's been rumblings. Of course, I mentioned Steve Wiltfong of 247 talked to his dad earlier. He heard that Lincoln Riley called DJ Lagway. That's all we've heard so far. People are still cautiously, I think, having him ink at Florida, but with all the noise around Florida and all the news about USC, what's kind of the situation
We're
here?
bringing it to you. Let's just stay tuned,
yes,
right? Like,
yes,
we got to get
yes.
off the air so we can set the stream up so
That's
that
a
you
good
guys
point.
can watch DJ Lagway make his signing.
There you
So
go.
you just stay tuned. You only got to wait 10 minutes.
Yeah, Willis High School, the guys at Texan Live will be there. They'll be setting up now. So go ahead and refresh this probably after we sign off. You'll see another one loading up right there as you see the graphic. National Signing Day for DJ Lagway. Stay tuned for the chaos, the fun, the love. I don't know, whatever you want, you're probably going to get it there. So that'll do it for us here at the National Signing Day Show, Republic of Football. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Powers. Thank you to Carter Yates, Greg Tepper, and our incredible producer, Mallory Hartley, who put this all together technically for all of us. And thank you to the Texan Live guys who are going to be putting on the DJ Lagway show.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for that because it's coming up in just over 10 minutes. So thank you guys, and we'll talk to you guys later.